welcome to Get in the Mix. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the MPC Studio, the brand new entry-level studio controller from Akai. Now, don't be fooled by the name. The only thing entry-level about this is the price. This thing is powerful. It really packs a punch and is a great addition to any studio setup. So let's dive right in with a full tutorial on how to use the device. So the first thing we're going to want to do is set the BPM of our track. We're going to hold tempo and we're going to twist our dial until we get to the tempo that we want. Today I'm going to go for 140 beats per minute. Now we're going to want to load in a selection of sounds or a kit. To do so, click Browse, and now we can navigate through our kits via the OLED screen and the data dial. Now, you may want to check on the software to make sure that you've selected the right expansion, and of course to make sure that you've got your media browser showing, which can be revealed and hidden with this little button on the bottom right hand corner. Now I'm going to go ahead and load this kit. Now because I'm on a blank track and it's the first track, as I load that in, it's just automatically thrown that onto the pads. But it's worth noting that if I've already got kits loaded in, when I load that track, it does just load it to the computer's memory. We have to specify for each track which kit we want to load into it from the RAM. So today we've gone for our kit and we've got a selection of sounds loaded in and ready to go. It's worth noting that in order to select the program, you click the program select button and you can cycle through the options. We've got a blank program and our kit. As you change that wheel, we can see it loads that kit in. We're good there. We're going to click main to head back to main mode. It's also useful at this point to know what your default bars are for the sequence. So MPC works in sequence and tracks. Now the sequence you can think of as your song, and the track you can think of as a channel. As in a conventional desk, you have a different channel for each of your sounds or groups. Now at this point we're going to name it as well, so I'm going to double click on sequence and we're going to name it MPC Beats, and we're going to name our track 1 drums. Keeping things organized in this way makes it much easier to work when navigating and switching between channels. If your bars are set to just 2 bars or 1 bar and you want to change that, you can do so manually here just under the sequence name, or via the preference you can change the default sequence length. Today I'm working in just a 4-bar loop because that's the basic bare bones of a drum beat. 4 bars will do us, but you can go 8, 16, 32, whatever it might be. So next we're going to learn how to record our beat in, and to do so is really easy. All we're going to do is click this start button a few times just to make sure that we're at the beginning of the track. We're going to press record, and when we press play, we're going to get a count in. So we've now recorded in a kick, a snare, and some really basic synth loops that we had loaded in from our kit. It's worth noting that whilst in the recording process you can erase really easily, and you can do so via the scrubbing playhead. Simply holding erase and hold the pad, and as we hold that pad it's going to scrub along and delete that. So let's delete our snares out, or claps, holding erase. See that as it goes through, it's scrubbing that kick from the pattern. Sorry, apologies, scrubbing that clap from the pattern. But we want a clap in our fact, so I'm going to click undo, and that's going to undo the scrub per note. Now undo and redo are really handy. I'm going to let that finish. Undo and redo are really handy tools, because just to be able to quickly undo and redo and move around and edit those changes you've made on the fly really quickly is really handy. Now at this point, great time to introduce note repeat. Now note repeat is commonly used for your hi-hats. If we hold a hi-hat sound down, we hold a note repeat button, we can use the touch strip to choose a denomination or division of our note repeat. 16, 8s, quarter triplets. We've got loads of different options, and as we move up we can get those in. So let's record some hi-hats into our pattern. This time, rather than clicking record, we're going to click overdub. Now be sure to do this, because if you click record, you're going to be recording over what you've done. It's going to erase it as you go, and we don't want that. We want it to record and add to that loop each time we go past. So we're going to make sure we're at the beginning of the sequence, clicked overdub, and we're going to press play for our counting. I know it seems like I'm waiting for long, but I'm just waiting for the sample to play out.
Yeah.
We can see now that we've recorded those hi-hats in, and we've introduced a triplet and a 16-note roll. And that's created some nice little variations, much quicker and much better than I could type in manually, or we could drag and drop in a DAW, and it's done it like that. Although for the vast majority of drums inside of an MPC system, we're going to be playing them in that fashion, that's not always the case. You may want to sequence some drums in. So by holding mode button and clicking pad 15, we can enter the step sequencer mode. Now you'll notice that each of the pads has some yellow text alongside some white text. The white text represents the pad number, and the yellow text represents what happens when you press mode and that pad. We'll cover a few of these in more depth shortly, but for first things first is we're going to just take a look at the step sequencer. If I hold shift and select a pad, that's the sound that we're then sequencing in. You'll notice that I've got a kick here and here, but I can of course pencil in extra kicks wherever I like. So let's listen to that. That's going to be a kick, the 2 kicks I originally done, and then 3 kicks on the beat. And we see that we can unpencil them and pencil them in as much as we like. Like for instance, if we put them all there. Yeah boy! You get the idea. We don't want to do that, but it's a good example to show you how you can write that in. Now of course, to change our sound, holding shift and selecting the other pad, and we can see here that we've got our clap. We can write that in, we can take that out. Now it's worth noting that you'll need to cycle through your bars, and to do so you need to move to the software. So above the sequencer section here we have bar, and you can just click the little arrow button to navigate through the different cycles and select the different parameters inside the step sequencer. As I said, today we're doing like a hip-hoppy, trappy thing. I played my drums in. I don't need to use the sequencer today, but a useful feature nonetheless. Now we're going to want to put in some sounds, our own sounds, synthesized sounds, bass lines, tops. They don't have to be synthesized, they could be sampled, but we want to put some instruments in. To load a synth sound, we follow much the same process as we did before, with a few small differences. We're going to go track select, and we're going to dial our wheel to move to an unused track. The first thing we're going to do, like we mentioned earlier, is name our track, and we're going to name it bass. Again, this means bass appears on our OLED screen there and just gives everything much better organization. Now, the next thing we need to do is make sure we've got the right track type. Now, we've been using so far just a drum track, but an instrument track works slightly differently. So shift and program select, and we can now see that in the OLED screen there, we have drum written. If we move down, we've got key group, plugin, and MIDI, and clip. In this case, we're going to be going key group, which is, as you can see here, mapped out our sound across the keyboards. But of course, at this point, we don't actually have a sound loaded in. So first things first, we head back to our browse, and we're going to find a sound. So I'm going to head to 808, and I'm going to load in the Orion 808. Then we're going to go program select, and I'm going to cycle to my Orion. Now, the Orion kit is spread across our pads. First thing I notice is that's a little bit high. That's nowhere near deep enough for a bass. So shift and 16 level to enter our notes and chromatic configuration. Shift and 16 level again to decide our root note, which in this case is D sharp. That's absolutely fine. Shift and 16 level again to select our scale, which in this case I'm going to go for Dorian. Shift and 16 level one more time gives us the octave. If I drop this down to 1, we've now got a much lower sound, much more suitable for a bass line. Happy days. If we navigate back to our section that we just went past, notes, you notice that I selected the Dorian scale, but you can of course select any scale in our Western music system. This is really handy because it's going to put the correct notes on the pads, giving you really creative freedom to just move around and just play and see how it feels and see what connects with you emotionally rather than worrying too much about the theory. At this point, we're going to want to record in that bass line, but first we need to work out what works. So let's go to the start of our track, we'll press play, and we'll just have a little play around. Right, I quite like those bass notes, they work reasonably well, so we're going to record in the exact same fashion we did with a drum line. We're going to press overdub, and we're going to press play for our counting. Quantize to snap that to the beat. Hey, I really do wish when you press stop, the sample stopped as well.
Double stop and stop and sound, wouldn't you? Double tap.
Double tap! A top tip from Ollie behind the camera. Double tap stop. That stops a long playing sample. You don't want that sample to continue. Double tap kills everything.
Test it, test it.
Test it. Ready? Yeah, we need that long. Yeah, it's coming, it's coming. There we go. And then. Yeah. Hey! No more waiting around.
Features.
Boom, we're learning on the fly. That's what we like. That's how we do it. So we've now put a bass line down, we've got some drums down, we've got some synth loops that are going on, but I think a nice little top line melody of some kind might be nice. So once again, track select, move across to our third track. We're going to name our new track, and this time I'm going to name it String, because I'm feeling like some juicy strings would be nice at this point. We're going to go browse, and this time we're going to go away from 808 and we're going to head over to Instruments 2. Stop works in all scenarios. So I found a string sound, I'm going to load that in. The beautiful thing about our pad performance mode is that it's already loaded us in the wrong sound. So what we need to do is we need to remember to select our program, because our track has defaulted with our bassline program in. So we're going to press program select, and we're just going to scroll down to the new string that I have assigned to the RAM. And the beautiful thing about the performance pad mode is that it defaults in the same scale mode that we use for our bass line. But the first thing I notice is that that's far too low for a string sound. Now we could go shift and double 16 level a few times until we get to our octave, or a really handy cheaty shortcut, not a cheaty shortcut, there's no such thing. A really handy shortcut is to use the pad bank buttons, and as you go down the pad banks,
that's cheated, man.
we go up the octave. So we'll go for pad bank 2. Nice. And again, let's play it in and just see what works. Easy as pie. We've now loaded and recorded a string sound on the top of our beat, our bass line, and our... No, that's it. On top of our beat and our bass line. We can't learn how to use an Akai controller in the context of MPC without talking about sampling. Now, of course, we've already done some sampling in the sense that I've loaded samples onto the pads, I've launched those samples, I've recorded back some of those samples, but there's also a few other versions of sampling that we talk about. And in the context of old school hip hop, and particular MPCs, we often have a form of sampling that involves chops. We might take a loop, a vocal sample, slice that up, and relaunch it in different ways, being able to create our own version, to creatively manipulate that for remixing and producing purposes. Now, we'll have a little look at an example of that because it's such a key feature of MPC. So we're going to go track select, we're going to go to unused track, and once again, I'm going to name this, so we keep it organized, and I'm going to name this chop. Really easy. Now program select, at the moment we've got our string, but we don't want string, so I'm going to go shift, track type, and we're going to go back to a drum track. And although it's not going to be a drum, you'll soon see why we've done so. Now we want to find a suitable loop for chopping up. So I'm going to go to my trap, soul, and R&B. Double stop, thank you very much, Ollie. And what we're going to do is, rather than searching for programs, I'm going to search for a sample. and we're going to find a loop that works. If I go instrument family, music. So now we've selected a sound that we're happy with, we're going to load that in, and I'm going to do so by simply dragging it over to our pad. Now it did ask me if I wanted to replace or rename because I've already used that sound somewhere else. We just click replace and it's ready to go. Now of course we can just click our button and launch our sample, but that's not what we wanted to do today. Today we want to chop and relaunch and resample our sound. So I'm going to hold mode and click pad 5 for sample edit, and now we can see that we're greeted by the waveform. Now as default, your device may load onto program mode. You see here on the software we have program. What you need to click on is chop. Chop allows us to launch a sample and then select where we want to insert chops. So as I click this first pad, the sample is going to play, and then I'm going to click another pad to launch a slice point. So let's try that now. Now we've inserted those slices, we can relaunch them. But you may notice some of them, like this one, I was slightly out. Me, bad old me. Bad old me?
Bad old me.
Bad old me. Don't ask me. We can see that that isn't at the beginning of the transient. So what I'm going to do is we've already selected it, I'm going to hold the sample start button, and now when I slide along my rotary encoder there, it moves the transient, and I can actually hold shift to get that on a more precise level, and we can really dial in the sample start point. Then I might go for number 3, which is also out just a tiny bit, and we'll go shift to hold it for denominations. Now that's perfect. Looks like number 5 is a little bit out, so pad 5, pad 6, and everything else to me seems pretty perfect. But now we want to know, how can we create an instrument with this and then record into our track? Well, MPC make this really, really easy, and it's such a great way. Now the first thing we want to do is head over to the software, and on the bottom here we can see extract new samples. By simply clicking new program, convert to new program with samples, do it. That's literally what the button says. We can now program select all the way to the end, and we've now got all our samples sliced across the pads, ready to re-record them in. Now as it goes, this is in the key of our track, so we can see if it works. Let's have a little play. It might not. Oh, it is the sample in the track. So that's why it worked. Yeah, it's the sample I've already used, so that's fine. We'll make some edits. Overdub, play for a count in. Easy as pie, we've recorded some extra do-overs over the top of my sieve. Now, that's probably not adding much to our track today, so I'm going to undo it. But you get the concept there. That can be used for vocals, that can be used for old vinyl recordings, that can be used for any sample you like. It gives you a really easy way to replay those samples. We've spoken a lot about recording, instruments, basses, drums, but let's now talk about mixing. Mixing is a vital process of any track. And for some people, you'll be doing mixing inside MPC because it is perfectly capable of doing so. For others, you may want to do your mixing outside of MPC. So the first thing we're going to do is select our drum track. And if you see on the left-hand side of the software, we've got here 2 channel strips showing. One that represents our group and one that represents our pad. Now we can click on the little button here to reveal just the group, but I like it on pad so you get the group and the pad. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that I can apply processing to individual tracks. Clap, perhaps I want to put a reverb on it. We'll double click, delay and reverb, reverb. We'll open up a reverb, we'll load a preset, cathedral, drum room. There we go. But it hasn't applied it to the rest of our kit. However, we may want to apply it to the entire kit, in which case, double click, delay and reverb, again, opening up a preset, and now it's applied to our entire kit.
Reverb on the kick.
Reverb on the kick.
Techno.
Oh. Now, of course, that's extreme. I don't want that much reverb on my whole drum kit, thank you very much. And if I do, maybe I just want it to be like basic drum room with a bit of dry wet down. That's fine. Turn the reverb off the clap, we don't want double reverb. That's great. However, there's also some really other handy features to look out for. Double click on inserts, and you can load a factory FX pack, drums and percussion, and you'll see that they've already created a bunch of fantastic presets for you that use a variety of processing tools. So we're going to double click on inserts, load factory effects, drums and percussion, and we're going to go drum room, and that's applied a compressor and a reverb. And then we're going to head to our kick, and we're going to go double click, load a factory FX pack, drums and percussion, modern kick. Bit of EQ, compression, and a transient designer that we can turn off or on. So you can see there, really easy way of applying processing. Now, of course, we've also got down here a padding option for each individual pad and for our kit overall, and volume information. But maybe you want to see a little bit more than 2 tracks. So in that case, you hold mode and we'll click pad 8 for channel mixes. And here we can see our entire channel strip, which is perfect for kind of doing that full mix down across our track. But if we scroll all the way to the right, we can also see that we have return channels. Now these channels are really handy for keeping CPU down, but also for creating uniformity across your track. Now what does that mean? Well, for instance, I could add a reverb on return 1, air reverb. I load in one of their lovely presets, we'll go concert hall, and I'll turn the mix up a little bit, 100% on the mix, why not? Now what we can do is that as we raise our send, we send that channel, that audio, to the return, and the effect is then applied on it without having to insert a processing tool inside the parameter. So as we play this kick, I can dial up the send, and we've now got reverb. Again, Ollie doesn't like reverbs on his kicks, so we take that out. But you can see there how that can really start saving you time. Parallel drum processing, reverbs, delays, all these tools that you might commonly use across lots of different sounds, you can create just one instance of the effect instead of using 10, and you can keep them all running through the same, which glues everything together that bit more. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's all well and good, James, but I don't want to be looking at the computer too much. I want to be looking on the device. And there are, of course, ways to affect and control volumes and parameters from the device. So what we're going to do is we're going to click touch strip, and we can actually cycle through different parameters. One of which is pad level, whereby the volume of our pad is now along this touch strip. And one of which is program level, which again is our program overall and the volume of that program. But pad level is what's going to be really important there. There are also other features like notes, whereby you can launch different notes from the touch strip, pitch bend for your synths, modulation, sustain, expression, and the famous Akai Q Link system. Q Links? Who? What? When? Why? Where? Well,
What is that?
now you ask, we'll take a quick look. So Q Links allow us to control parameters of various different synths, instruments, processing tools. And if we have it in the screen mode, it locks to whatever is at the forefront of the screen. So for instance, let's head to my track select. We've got our drum track there. Let's pop a filter on our drum track. Air filter. Open that up, and you can see that as I've brought this filter to the forefront, our Q links here have changed to the parameters of our filter. Now, if I press touch strip and hold it, it offers me the Q Link option on the screen here. Now I can select a pad, and each pad corresponds to one of the Q Links. So I'm going to go for pad 13 because that corresponds to our cutoff frequency. And now we have a filter that has been applied to this touch strip. And as we play, I can apply that filter to the drums.
Oh.
Hey, hey, hey. Now it's quite quiet, so we'll bring our drums back up again. That's all well and good, but we might want to record that in. So let's record some automation in. So we're going to skip to the beginning of our track. To read and write automation, all we need to do is click this giant green button labeled automation. Now it's red, that means it's engaged and ready to record, and as we press play, anything that we do here will record in as automation. So we'll click overdub and play for our counting. And we can see that that automation then recorded in and has played back, giving you endless capabilities in terms of what you can do with processing, automation, and applying those effects. that was the laptop. So now we've covered the vast majority of the main features on the MPC2. It's just enough time for a few of my top ticks.
Yeah!
Top ticks? Top tips. One of the first things that I noticed when using this device was I'm not one for mixing inside of a beat making system like this. I prefer to do my mixing inside Ableton. That's where I feel comfortable. I much prefer a linear view to a song. I love creating beats and patterns and sounds inside something like this, but a linear view for me is where it's at for a mixdown. So there are some really handy features that allow us to take and drag and drop samples out of the software. If we navigate back to the software and we look up here on the right hand side, we can see a little button there that says export audio. If I click and drag that, it's going to collect everything in this window, everything in this group, into an audio file that I can then just drag straight into my DAW. Literally as easy as double clicking on it to load it in, click and drag. I now have an audio file ready to go wherever I like. Copy it to the desktop, or we can drop it straight into our DAW. But again, I'm not one for taking whole loops out because I want to be able to affect those differently and individually. Now a really, really handy feature for this is to head over to our file menu. We're going to click to the three little lines, edit, track, and we're going to be taking a look at this button labeled explode.
Explode.
Explode. I know the name's a little bit silly, you know, Akai doing their own thing. Blow it apart, but that does almost aptly describe what's happening, because what this is going to do is it's going to dissect and rip apart our track and take out all the individual components and create an individual track for each one. So I'm going to go explode, and now when I go to my track, I've got track 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 that are all labelled trap soul, but you can see that I've got kick, clap, hat, music, vocal, etc. So anything that I've used and put a sample in, hi-hat, is there. I can now click it and I'm greeted with only the kicks from my channel. I can do exactly the same again, double click on audio export, click and drag, and this allows me to drag that straight into my DAW. Rinse and repeat for each of my channels, and there, really easily and really quickly, I've loaded my entire track into my DAW. Really easy to do.
Nice.
Nice. Top tip number 2, a really handy tool is the ability to set our pad colors. Our kits are always going to load in nicely, but sometimes if I load a new track, it might not have the colors that I want. Well, that's fine. It's really easy. What we can do, click on the three lines, edit, program, and then we can go pad color. Here we can name individual colors, or we can name edit single pads, we can edit all pads, we can make all the pads red, purple, blue. We can change any of these colors into individuals at the just click of a button. Making your tracks organized and easy to view, really, really simple. Another quick and handy tool is, of course, zoom. If we hold zoom and dial in and out, we can zoom in and out of our track. So if I view our track in track mode there, find the zoom button and we hold, and we can zoom in and we can zoom out, giving us full view of our track, giving us a little view of just some of the notes. Really handy tip there. You can also layer samples on an MPC. Not very conventional, I know, but an MPC is still capable of doing it. So here we've got a clap, but if I select sample select, I can then cycle through up to 4 different layers. So I've got sample select there. Let's go through. I've now got a kick. I should now click this button and we have a kick and a clap. Can you hear it? Just about. There's a kick there. There's a bass.
Oh, there it is.
Bass and a clap. And we can do this over and over again. Ooh. Really handy for layering those drums and just making drums punch through a little bit more. Maybe you've got a couple of different types of kicks that you want to layer in. You can load those in, and inside of the software you can even apply processing and envelopes, transients, all these different things. You can affect the sound how you like. And for one final last top tip, I'm just going to quickly show you how to use the chord mode. Now, we didn't use it in today's track, but if I navigate back to our string sound, where we've got our strings, we go Shift and 16 level, and rather than being in notes mode for our scales like we've been using here, we can use chords, chromatic chords, and progressions. And progressions is a really handy tool for those that want to be able to put some chord patterns out but maybe aren't super adept at writing those chord progressions. We can go Shift 16 level for our root note, that's D sharp, that's fine, octave, and then our progressions. So classic house progression all the way through lovely jazzy progressions. Make like a swindle. I actually did yesterday. It was like boom, dum, dum, and I was like, yeah, this is garage. Actually, it was. It was like swindle garage vibes. But again, top tip, easy to use. You can record those patterns in just like we did a MIDI track. I hope you've learned lots today. As always, like if you like, dislike if you dislike, and chuck us a comment in the comment section, and be sure to subscribe and make sure to get in the mix.